Hey, what is up guys? We're going to be doing a tips and tricks video for this particular one. So this is for Metaphys, of course, as you can see by the title. This is to just clear a few rulings. I might show off a bit of combos and stuff like that that you can do with this particular deck. But overall, a few things that people are just confused about when playing this deck for the first time. So for the big Metaphys monsters like Daedalus, Nephthys, Tyrant Dragon, etc., obviously they have effects during the next standby phase of the turn that they were banished, and that is for them to shuffle themselves back into the deck and allow you to activate their effects. Now, a lot of people actually think this is a mandatory effect. Well, it actually isn't. It's actually an optional effect, so you don't actually have to return them to the deck. A lot of people are probably also too scared to shuffle it, to actually keep it there, and instead they shuffle it into the deck in fear that they might deck out, simply because of how many cards they can actually banish off Ragnarok's effect. But I think that's definitely a wrong conclusion to make, is that you don't necessarily have to worry about decking out or anything, as long as you're playing cards like Necroface. But the thing was, with these big monster effects, you don't actually have to return them to the deck. They are optional. I think it's simply because ever since Metaphys Decoy Dragon came out, not too many people are aware of this. And, before it came out, I'm sure a lot of people kept using its effect to shuffle it back into the deck because they had no need to keep it in the banish zone. Seeing that Decoy Dragon is now out, you actually have quite viability in actually keeping them in the banish zone. So what you could do is actually keep Daedalus or Nephthys in the banish zone and instead not use their effects, because you don't always have to use their effects. You can keep it there, and when Decoy Dragon's effect triggers off, it will special summon them from the banish zone or perhaps in your graveyard. And since Decoy Dragon is obviously a Metaphys monster, the effects of them being special summoned out will also activate, which gives you a lot more options, a lot more flexibility with this deck, and you could do so much. It's kind of like having a small trap card with the fact that you just have 3 of these cards, and it's not even once per turn, so you don't always have to shuffle it back in, and that's something that a lot of people just constantly do when they're particularly new to this deck. The second thing I actually want to talk about is actually Necroface and how important this card actually is. If you guys have watched my recent deck profile, you know that I only play 2 Necroface because it is at 2, and I only play 2 Gold Sarcophagus here. I've thought about actually putting in a 3rd copy of Gold Sarcophagus because I realize how important Necroface actually is, and I think I actually will do that in the next deck profile, because Necroface, if it's banished, you can banish the top 5 cards of your deck and your opponent's deck, which is obviously good for you because you get more resources in the banished zone, and that's pretty much what this deck revolves around. But the thing is this, if this card was banished and you have no way of bringing it back, then you could potentially deck out in this game. So you got to be careful when using Necroface's effect and hope that you don't actually banish another one of these and you have no way of bringing it back. This is why we're playing 2 copies, potentially 3 copies of Gold Sarcophagus, because if we activate that, banish it, at least we'll get it back in 2 standby phases from now, and I'm pretty sure that your opponent won't find a way to actually stop you from getting it, aside from the fact that they might be negating Gold Sarcophagus, but I think many people won't even bother negating Gold Sarcophagus. But overall, you should be able to either draw one or you should be able to get one off Gold Sarcophagus's effect, because once you normal summon it, you can return everything back from the banish zone, so that will pretty much prevent you from decking out. But overall, that's a very important card, and in the first few games I had with this particular deck, I didn't realize how important this card was. I banished this card off Ragnarok's effect, and then one of the effects banished off the second one, which means I had no way of getting it back, and I actually ended up decking out from that game because I couldn't get Necroface back to my hand other than using Gold Sarcophagus. So overall, I was quite stuck there. Unless you guys have any suggestions I could actually play that could allow me to get it back to my hand without the use of Gold Sarcophagus, this is definitely a card you have to be wary of, and make sure you keep track of it. Moving on, we also have Metaphys. So this card is a mandatory effect, meaning as soon as your Metaphys card is banished, the effects will trigger off right away, which pretty much means that even if your opponent has nothing on the field, all monsters on the field except Metaphys will lose 500 attack and defense on your turn, and on your opponent's turn, all monsters will change their battle positions except Metaphys monsters, and it just happens straight off. Same thing applies for when you play two, both will activate, meaning if you have two on the board, and you want to do the changing battle positions one will activate and then the other will activate, flipping it back up. So overall, your net battle position change is pretty much 0, because there was no change at all since you have two of them. Of course, you could play three, meaning one of them will change it to defense, one of them will change it to attack, and then the other will change it back to defense again. So got to be careful of using this card as well. It definitely can affect different things in different ways, and your opponent can actually use it against you. Aside from that, we also have Metaphys Factor. This card, I just want to advocate how good this card actually is, and I do think that more people should definitely play it in their decks, and I'm still surprised that there are so many deck profiles out there that don't incorporate it, but it just prevents your opponent from actually responding to your Metaphys effects, which is definitely a really good way to stop them from doing things and allowing you to actually let your things go off. So definitely a really good card there. Alright, so now for a few somewhat combos, kind of. Having these two cards banished is definitely a really, really good combo you can start off here. It's very generic for this deck, and you can actually pull off quite a bit of things. So if you have both Tyrant Dragon and Nephthys banished, on the next standby phase, what you could actually do is you could shuffle back Nephthys first and get its effect off, allowing you to search for any of your Metaphys monsters. Now, you have the option of obviously Ragnarok, Daedalus, or perhaps even another Tyrant Dragon. But obviously Nephthys can't search itself. You can also bring back Decoy Dragon as well, but basically you can bring back any of these cards, then shuffle in Tyrant Dragon, allowing you to special summon any of these, which will trigger off all their effects. Obviously, you won't trigger off Decoy Dragon because its effect is when your opponent attacks it, or any of your other monsters. And Tyrant Dragon, Daedalus, and Ragnarok, they all have very unique effects. Ragnarok will activate when it's special or normal regardless, and Daedalus will instantly just banish all the opponent's monsters. It'll banish yours as well, but obviously you'll get more benefits out of it. And Tyrant Dragon just makes it unaffected by trap cards, so it's definitely a very big beat stick that you could just bring out to just have a wall that will prevent your opponent from getting to your life. So just something that you could go for. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have already figured that out, that these two getting banished definitely sets you up for a lot of great potential here. Alright, so another great thing I want to actually talk about here is Eater of Millions. So Eater of Millions and the extra deck, the recommendation is you do not banish your entire extra deck for any of your Eater of Millions. In fact, you can just banish the minimum, which is 5, and bring out Eater of Millions, because really this card is meant to just deal with your opponent's big monsters that we can't deal with ourselves, and because of that, we don't have to banish every single thing. I just recommend you banish 5 of them at a time, and hopefully you can bring them all back again with Necroface. But overall, some people have been banishing all 15 at once, and I just think that's definitely a bad move, because you'll just lose out on everything, and the chances that you'll get them back are obviously not as high as you might think, because Necroface is definitely an important card that your opponent will make sure you won't pull off. Overall, Eater of Millions, we're playing 2, and obviously for that we're not going to banish off everything, but I still see people getting rid of the entire extra deck for no reason. A few other cool things you could actually do is, since Metaphys Ragnarok is actually a tuner monster, you can actually do quite a few things that will actually be pretty surprising to you guys. So together with Daedalus here, that actually makes a level 11, so potentially you could go for a Star Eater here, which could definitely seal the game off. Because the thing is this, sometimes we can't deal with stuff all the time, you know. For example, let's say we had to face off against a deck that had a lot of 3000 beat sticks. In that case, you could either get rid of them through Daedalus's effect, or instead you could actually just go for a Star Eater, which is a 3200 beat stick, and your opponent also can't respond to that as well, which makes it all the more powerful and all the more worthwhile. But speaking of Ragnarok being a tuner, you can also play cards such as Decoy Dragon as the other material, allowing you to go for a level 6. I did mention in the deck profile that you can go for Metaphys Horus, but overall you are open to other level 6 synchros as well, which is definitely great to see over here. You also have different level 5 options with Eat of Millions, and if you somehow manage to get out a Necroface or perhaps even a Fairy Tale Snow, then you basically can go for a level 8, and I think the perfect level 8 to actually go for here is Cyframe Lord Omega. Definitely a great choice that you could go into. So definitely don't forget that Ragnarok is a tuner monster and that it can actually open up so many options for what this deck can potentially do here. Alright, so I hope you guys actually enjoyed this. This is just really a small thing to clear up for a few people, because I see some people testing out this deck for the first time. I even noticed this when playing it myself as well. This deck is actually insanely good, and I think it's easy for people to actually misplay with this because of how many things are optional, how many effects are mandatory, and also, you know, the fact that this deck operates on the banish zone, it definitely does change things up with different rulings, and I think a lot of people are definitely confused about this. In fact, with Cyframe Lord Omega, on the turn your opponent wants to bring back their monsters, you do have the option to shuffle it back in instead, but you'll be the one chaining to it, meaning their Omega will activate first, returning to the field, but if you chain this, then yours will happen first. So if you manage to special summon, or if you manage to return Tyrant Dragon and special summon Daedalus from your hand onto the field, you won't actually be banishing off their Cyframe Lord Omega. Instead, yours will come out first, and then their Cyframe Lord Omega will come out afterwards, meaning it's actually safe from Daedalus's effect. So that's a ruling that I recently had cleared up for me, because I actually had to deal with that particular situation. So yeah, if you guys actually have any other rulings that I might have missed out on this, or anything like tips and combos that you guys actually know for this deck, then definitely let me know in the comment section down below for everyone else as well. And it will definitely be really good, because this deck definitely has a lot of potential for you to actually make a lot of misplays. So I definitely think we need to be more informed with this deck, and I think this deck is actually a lot more powerful than you think. The fact that it can deal with so many other decks, but it still hasn't topped any particular tournaments yet. But yeah, tell me what you guys actually think. Let me know your ideas. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you next time.